The warship, now unmistakably visible to every sensor network in the galaxy, slowly drifted through the vast expanse of space. It was massive, so much larger than anything the Coalition had ever seen. Its hull was a seamless blend of metallic silver and darkened energy fields, pulsating with raw, almost unnatural power. No known technology could account for its size or design. There were no markings, no symbols, no flag to identify it. It was simply there. The first Coalition ships to intercept it didn't even know what to make of the situation. They were designed to patrol borders, quash rebellion, and maintain control over the less significant parts of the galaxy. They had seen strange ships, even feared certain weapons, but this warship, it was something else entirely. Its speed, its power, it defied everything they had ever known. "We have never seen anything like this," one of the alien captains muttered as his ship's sensors flickered in an attempt to analyze the unknown vessel. The ship wasn't just another anomaly. It was an imposing wall of raw energy that seemed to eat up the very space around it. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Different alien species began to chime in, but no one could identify the origins of this warship. Some speculated that it was a new weapon from an unknown race, an enemy the galaxy had never encountered. Others believed it to be an advanced secret weapon created by one of the older galactic powers, but humanity was widely dismissed as too young and too insignificant to possess such technology. Then the unthinkable happened. A communication signal was intercepted. The voice that came through the static wasn't one of alien commanders or warlords. It was human. "We are the human race. And this ship, this is our final warning. You have 72 hours to retreat from human space or face annihilation." The message was direct, simple. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. The voice on the other end spoke with a calm confidence, one that seemed almost absurd given humanity's history as a weak, marginalized species. But it wasn't absurd. The moment the message was broadcast, every alien in the galaxy realized just how serious this was. Humanity was not just making threats. Something had changed, something fundamental. The world of galactic politics was shifting, and this warship, the Leviathan, was at the center of it. News spread quickly across the galaxy. A mixture of disbelief, shock, and a dawning sense of fear began to settle in. The Leviathan wasn't just a powerful weapon. It was a symbol, one that radiated a message that couldn't be ignored. "We will never be slaves again," the voice continued, as the message repeated in every corner of space. "You've underestimated us for too long." Coalition officials scrambled to piece together what was happening. The very thought of humanity, still a young and mostly unremarkable species by galactic standards, building such an unstoppable warship was inconceivable. But the evidence was undeniable. The Leviathan was here, and it wasn't going anywhere. Behind closed doors, in darkened command centers across the galaxy, plans were being forged. What could be done to stop this new threat? How could they combat a warship that seemed to defy the rules of physics? A few factions even began to whisper that humanity had made a deal with a much older, more dangerous race, one that had gifted them the secrets of this powerful ship. But there was one thing that everyone agreed on. Humanity had just become a major player in the galaxy, whether they liked it or not. The countdown began. Only 3 days left before the Coalition would have to respond. Would they rise to the challenge? Or would they fall beneath the weight of a warship that was far more than anyone could handle? The tension in the galaxy was palpable. Every faction, every species, seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. No one had expected humanity, of all species, to rise up in such a way. But now, with the Leviathan looming in the void, the fear was real. The Coalition had underestimated them, and now they had to pay the price. As the 72-hour deadline drew closer, the Coalition mobilized its forces. It was an unprecedented response. Thousands of warships, some of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy, were being sent to confront this new threat. Among them were the feared Sorthan Dominion, whose ships were known for their near-impenetrable shields, and the Varathar combine, a species with weapons capable of ripping through entire planets. The Leviathan stood its ground, parked just outside the outer rim of human space. Its engines pulsed softly, as if it were waiting. And then, just as the last ship in the enemy armada crossed into its sensor's range, the first blast rang out. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The speed of the energy beam was enough to break through the fabric of space itself, tearing apart the first enemy ship in mere seconds. The fleet didn't have time to respond. The Leviathan unleashed its full arsenal, with weapons firing faster than the speed of light. Alien ships, unprepared for this level of assault, didn't even have the chance to retaliate. Blasts of pure energy exploded across the battlefield, turning enemy warships into molten scraps of metal. One by one, the ships fell, each explosion more violent than the last. The coalition forces attempted to regroup, but the Leviathan was everywhere, its movement so swift it seemed to flicker in and out of existence. How is this possible? Captain Frith of the Xorthan Dominion whispered to his second-in-command. His hand shook as he watched his fleet crumble. Their shields, once considered impenetrable, shattered like glass under the barrage of the Leviathan's advanced weapons. His ships were useless against such overwhelming force. The battle was over in minutes, but the aftermath was far from over. What remained of the Coalition's fleet was scattered across space, the wreckage floating aimlessly in the void. The Leviathan hung in the distance, unmoving like a god watching from afar. The crew aboard the ship was eerily silent, knowing that while they had won, this victory would only escalate the war. The Leviathan's commander, Admiral Alice Cartwright, stood at the bridge, staring at the carnage. She felt no thrill of victory, only a cold, gnawing certainty that this was only the beginning. She had known that the alien forces would retaliate, but the scale of their response, the intensity of their weaponry, it wasn't something humanity had expected to face so soon. The next wave would come, and it would be worse. "Admiral," said Lieutenant James Krieger, his voice steady but tense, "we've intercepted their communications. They're already regrouping. They'll come back stronger, much stronger, next time." Alice nodded, her mind already racing through contingencies. "Then we'll be ready. We'll use what they don't know about us, their arrogance. We have to outthink them, outmaneuver them. We don't need to fight their numbers. We need to strike where they least expect it." She turned to the tactical officer. "Prepare the next set of coordinates. We're not sticking around for their counterattack." As the Leviathan prepared to leave, the galaxy was left to absorb the shock. News of the battle spread across every star system, and for the first time in a long time, the galaxy had to consider humanity, not as weak, not as naive, but as a force that had just proven it could take on the mightiest powers and win. Back at the Galactic Council, panic turned to fury. "This is an act of war," screamed Supreme Chancellor Veller of the Varathar Combine. "We will not stand by and let these humans destroy everything we've built." Other factions muttered in agreement, but one by one, they all understood the truth. The Leviathan was no fluke. Humanity was here, and they had the power to change the course of the galaxy forever. The galaxy was still reeling from the carnage of the Leviathan's first strike. News of the battle spread like wildfire, rippling through the many systems that made up the Galactic Coalition. Across billions of star systems, debates raged. Some factions, seeing the sheer might of the Leviathan, began to rethink their stance on humanity altogether. Was it worth the risk to confront such a powerful, unpredictable force? Others, however, refused to back down. The humiliation of defeat was too much to bear. Do we really want to allow this kind of power to roam free? Supreme Chancellor Veller growled in the council chambers, his eyes burning with the fury of 1,000 lost ships. He was the leader of the Varathar Combine, an ancient and technologically superior species who ruled their domain with an iron fist. To be bested by humans, an upstart species, was a blow to their pride they couldn't ignore. We have no choice. If humanity is left unchecked, they will challenge everything we've built. We must unite. All of us. Together, we can crush this threat before it spreads further. Veller continued, slamming his fist on the table in frustration. We cannot allow them to become the new power in this galaxy. But not all were as quick to jump into conflict. The Xorthan Dominion, a proud but logical species, had seen the Leviathan's capabilities firsthand. Their fleet had been shattered with terrifying ease, and they were not eager to make the same mistake again. While the Verithar combined clamored for vengeance, the Xorthans were more cautious, weighing their options carefully. Perhaps we should consider a different path, said Admiral Grivak, one of the Xorthan Leadership Council, his voice steady and composed. They are not the invaders we feared. They simply wish to protect themselves. No more, no less. If we understand their motives, we may be able to negotiate, avoid further bloodshed. His words were met with skepticism and ridicule. To many of the council members, negotiation with humans was as absurd as considering a wild animal as a trusted ally. The thought of a human race, once shackled to their own planet, now wielding a weapon capable of destroying entire fleets, was a terrifying concept. The galaxy had lived for centuries in a balance of power. Until now. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Leviathan, Admiral Alice Cartwright was already preparing for what was to come. She knew the victory had been significant, but it hadn't been enough to change the larger galaxy's view of humanity. As the battle's aftermath continued to unfold, Cartwright worked tirelessly to ensure the Leviathan was in top shape, ready for the next challenge. We've shaken them, no doubt about it, she said, staring out at the vast expanse of space. But they won't back down so easily. The galaxy will be coming for us. We need to be prepared. Lieutenant Krieger nodded in agreement. And we will be. We've got one thing they don't: creativity. While they've spent eons perfecting their technology, we've spent just as much time adapting, evolving. Humanity has always thrived in the face of adversity. They think they understand us, but they have no idea. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, leaders across the galaxy were beginning to align themselves. While some hesitated, others saw an opportunity in the chaos. Treshan, leader of the enigmatic Sereth Empire, spoke up, his voice smooth and calculating. Perhaps this is the perfect moment for an alliance. If we work together, combining our fleets and technology, we can end humanity's rise before it truly begins. But the Sereth Empire was not known for cooperation. It was known for domination. Treshan had his own agenda. The Leviathan's technology, its unimaginable power, could be the key to his empire's ascension. The thought of claiming humanity's greatest asset for his own was tempting, but not everyone in the council shared his vision. The galaxy's response was fragmented. The coalition factions split into two groups, those who wanted total war and those who sought a more measured approach. But the one thing they all agreed on was that humanity had to be dealt with, swiftly and decisively. Across the stars, messages began to be sent, encrypted and fast. Fleet commanders readied their ships, scientists scrambled to understand the technology behind the Leviathan, and diplomats quietly prepared for what would likely be a tense intergalactic summit. Humanity's audacity had disrupted the fragile balance of power, and now the galaxy was in motion, preparing for a war that no one could afford to lose. In the end, it wasn't just the Leviathan that had made its mark. It was humanity itself. The galaxy had no choice now but to take them seriously. The question was, would humanity's creators be ready for the coming storm? Would they continue to adapt and fight, or would they crumble beneath the weight of the greatest war the galaxy had ever seen? The coalition's retaliation came swiftly, as though the entire galaxy had decided to act as one. The leaders of the various factions, though divided on their strategies, had come to one undeniable conclusion. Humanity had to be eliminated before it could amass any more power. The Leviathan had proven too dangerous, and its destruction, or at least its subjugation, was now the galaxy's top priority. A massive armada, unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, was assembled in the deepest reaches of space. The fleets included ships from the Verithar Combine, the Xorthan Dominion, the Sereth Empire, and several smaller factions that had joined the call for war. Together, they boasted some of the most advanced and lethal weapons known to the galaxy, including cloaking technology, warp bombs, and a new class of super dreadnoughts designed to withstand the kind of assault that had crippled the Xorthans only weeks before. Captain Vrith of the Xorthan Dominion was chosen to lead the coalition forces. His humiliation during the first strike had weighed heavily on his mind, but it had also hardened his resolve. He knew the Leviathan was not just a ship. It was a symbol of everything that could go wrong when a species broke free of its chains and dared to challenge the established order. He would make sure that symbol was crushed, no matter the cost. "We must be patient," Vrith said, his voice cold as he addressed the commanders of the Allied fleets. "The Leviathan is a formidable opponent, but it is not invincible. We have learned from our previous mistakes. We will not fall into the same traps again." The fleet set off toward human space, the engines of thousands of ships lighting up as they entered a direct course for the Leviathan. The message was clear. The time for diplomacy was over. The time for war had come. Meanwhile, Admiral Alice Cartwright was already prepared. She had anticipated the coalition's response, and the Leviathan was not idly waiting for them to arrive. The warship drifted, hidden within the dense asteroid fields near a dead star, far from the predictable lanes of galactic trade and exploration. It was the perfect hiding spot to ambush the incoming armada, and the Leviathan was not alone. Smaller ships, modified human vessels, spread out in tight formations, laying traps, setting up ambush points, and waiting for the enemy to take the bait. "Prepare for engagement," Cartwright ordered from the bridge. Her eyes were steely, her voice calm, but the weight of the moment was heavy. Humanity had fought for centuries to carve out a place in the galaxy, and now, with the Leviathan as their sword, they would fight to ensure they kept it. The first shots were fired by the Coalition's fleet. A group of warships from the Verithar Combine tried to push forward with their signature long-range plasma cannons, sending blasts toward where they expected the Leviathan to be. The shots hit empty space, leaving only a smattering of debris from the surrounding asteroids. The Leviathan had already shifted, its sheer speed and maneuverability rendering the long-range strikes useless. "Target their weak spots," Cartwright ordered. "Focus on the lead ship, Vrith's flagship." The Leviathan emerged from the asteroid field with the speed of a ghost, its massive silhouette blotting out the stars as it tore through the coalition lines. It moved faster than any ship had a right to, weaving between enemy ships with fluid grace, its weapons slicing through the hulls of multiple dreadnoughts in a single, seamless barrage. The alien fleets struggled to react. The Leviathan was simply too fast, its weapons too powerful. Shields began to buckle, and the once formidable fleets of the coalition began to fragment. The Xorthan Dominion's flagship, Thundering Reaper, tried to position itself for a retaliatory strike, but it was too slow. The Leviathan unleashed a burst of concentrated energy, disabling the ship's engines in one devastating shot. The coalition was not prepared for this. Despite their advanced technology, they were outmatched by the unrelenting force and speed of the Leviathan. Ships fell to the relentless assault, and the coalition fleet began to break apart, scattering in every direction. The warship's devastating firepower was unmatched, and the alien forces realized with dawning horror that the conflict was no longer one they could win. But the enemy wasn't done yet. The Sereth Empire had been quiet during the early stages of the conflict, but now they sent in their secret weapon. A cloaked ship with an experimental quantum pulse weapon capable of destabilizing entire star systems. The ship emerged from the shadows, invisible to sensors, and aimed for the Leviathan. Cartwright watched as the readouts flickered on her screen, showing the approaching weapon. "Evasive maneuvers," she barked. But it was too late. A pulse of energy erupted from the cloaked Sereth ship, crashing into the Leviathan's side. causing a massive shockwave to ripple through the hull. For a moment, the Leviathan shuddered, and the crew felt the tremor run through the massive warship. Sparks flew across the bridge as the lights flickered. The enemy had landed a hit, and it was a direct one. "Damage report," Cartwright demanded. "Minimal," the tactical officer replied. "We're still functional." "Admiral, the shields absorbed most of the damage. We'll be back at full power in minutes." But the Seraph ship had already vanished, disappearing into the vastness of space, leaving the Leviathan to contemplate its next move. The battle wasn't over yet, and the Coalition had one final trick up its sleeve. The Leviathan had weathered the Seraph Empire's quantum pulse weapon, but the hit had shaken its crew to their core. The pulse, a weapon capable of disrupting the very fabric of space, had damaged several vital systems in the lower hull, and the warship's unrelenting power had been momentarily sapped. But Admiral Alice Cartwright wasn't the type to panic. She had led humanity's military forces through decades of conflict, and in that moment, she knew the one thing she could count on: human ingenuity. The Leviathan might have taken a blow, but it wasn't out of the fight yet. "Status report," Cartwright barked, her voice cutting through the quiet chaos of the bridge. "Shields are down by 20%, Lieutenant Krieger reported, his fingers flying over the controls. "Engines are at 80% capacity. We'll be operational in 10 minutes, but we've lost power to several of our secondary systems." The damage was significant, but not catastrophic. The Leviathan had been built for this, and its crew was trained to face such adversity. Cartwright felt a surge of resolve. This was a test of humanity's strength, and they wouldn't back down. "We've identified the location of the Seraph ship," Krieger said, turning toward her. "It's trying to reposition itself for another strike. It's a stealth ship. We won't get another chance to catch it off guard." Cartwright's gaze hardened. "Not if we can help it." She turned to her tactical officer. "Prepare to deploy the Harbinger drones. We'll flush them out. They won't be able to hide this time." The Harbinger drones were designed specifically for stealth countermeasures. They were small, agile, and armed with high-powered electromagnetic pulses that could disable cloaking fields. With the drones deployed, the Leviathan would have the upper hand. Cartwright wasn't about to let the Seraph Empire gain any more ground. Meanwhile, the Coalition fleet had begun to regroup, their ships recovering from the Leviathan's devastating assault. Though battered, the Varathar Combine, Sorthan Dominion, and Seraph Empire were not without their resources. In the depths of space, far from the Leviathan's immediate reach, they began to form a new strategy, one that would involve more than just firepower. "We cannot continue to fight this war with brute force," Supreme Chancellor Veller said, pacing back and forth in the Varathar Command Center. "This human warship is too powerful for any single fleet to confront head-on. We need to isolate it. We need to strike at its heart, humanity itself." The leaders of the Sorthan and Seraph factions exchanged glances, considering the implications of Veller's words. They had lost too many ships, too many lives, to continue this way. "Are you suggesting we attack Earth?" Admiral Grivak of the Sorthans asked, his voice a mixture of disbelief and resignation. "Yes," Veller replied, his eyes narrowing. "If we eliminate their homeworld, we cut off the source of their power. The Leviathan might be unstoppable, but the humans behind it are still mortal." The room fell silent. It was a plan that would not only cripple humanity's war efforts, but also send a message to the galaxy that no species, no matter how advanced, could stand against the Coalition when it united in purpose. Meanwhile, far from the command centers, in the cold silence of space, the Leviathan prepared for its next move. The Harbinger drones were launched, their sleek forms darting into the darkness, searching for the elusive Seraph ship. Cartwright's face was grim as she watched the screens flicker to life, tracking the drone's progress. "They're there," Krieger said, his voice tense. "We've locked onto the Seraph ship's location. They're attempting to cloak again, but it won't work." The Harbinger drones closed in on the Seraph ship, and Cartwright knew this was their moment. A single pulse from one of the drones would render the enemy ship visible, allowing the Leviathan to deliver a decisive blow. "All units, fire at will," Cartwright commanded. The Leviathan unleashed its full might in a coordinated strike, the dark expanse of space, lit up by the explosive discharge of energy as the Surith ship was revealed in a flash. The ship didn't have time to react before a barrage of energy cannons tore through its defenses. The stealth ship exploded in a brilliant fireball, a warning to all factions who thought they could hide from the wrath of the Leviathan. But just as victory seemed imminent, the news came from the intelligence team. The Coalition had mobilized another fleet. This time, they were not just coming for a direct confrontation. They were coming for Earth itself. "We've intercepted a message," Krieger said, his voice tense. "The Coalition has launched a full-scale operation to invade Earth. They intend to wipe us out before we can build any more of these warships." Cartwright's eyes widened. Earth, humanity's homeworld, was now the primary target. The stakes had escalated. The battle had always been about survival, but now it was more personal than ever. "Prepare to defend Earth at all costs," Cartwright ordered, her voice steely with determination. "We will not let them take our home." The news hit Earth like a thunderclap. The Coalition fleets, having regrouped and renewed their resolve, were heading straight for humanity's homeworld. The message from the Galactic Council was clear. Earth was to be neutralized, its people eradicated, and the Leviathan destroyed. The human race's audacity would no longer be tolerated. Admiral Alice Cartwright stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, watching Earth draw closer. The planet, their cradle, their foundation, was now a target. Its shining blue surface now overshadowed by the looming threat of galactic warships. The weight of the situation was crushing, yet her resolve was unwavering. "How long until the Coalition fleet arrives?" Cartwright asked, her voice sharp. 30 minutes, Admiral," Lieutenant Krieger replied, his eyes glued to the sensors. "They've already crossed into Earth's outer defense perimeter. We'll be their first line of defense." The tension in the room was thick as Cartwright turned to face her crew. They had fought and bled for this moment. The battle against the Coalition had gone far beyond a mere war between starships. It was a battle for their survival, for the future of humanity itself. "We've trained for this," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "Earth is not just a planet. It's a symbol. We will defend it with everything we've got, no matter the cost." The Leviathan hurtled toward Earth, its systems now fully operational. The damage from the Surith ship had been repaired, and the crew was ready. On the surface of Earth, military forces had already begun to mobilize. The planet's defense systems, long considered a backup to humanity's military might, were now being activated in full force. Earth wasn't as defenseless as the Coalition assumed. "We're picking up multiple incoming ships from the Coalition," Krieger announced. "They're breaking into smaller strike groups. Some are going for the atmosphere. Others are taking a direct course toward the surface. We need to hit them hard and fast," Cartwright said. "No hesitation. Let them know humanity isn't just surviving. We're fighting back." The Leviathan's engines roared as it accelerated toward the advancing fleet. The enemy ships were preparing their own weapons, but Cartwright knew the Leviathan would not be caught off guard. The warship had speed, power, and the element of surprise on its side. It was humanity's hammer in the face of an unforgiving galaxy. As the Coalition ships neared, the Leviathan launched a flurry of devastating strikes. Laser beams and energy projectiles tore through space with precision, smashing through the shields of the enemy warships before they had a chance to retaliate. The first wave of Coalition vessels, unable to match the Leviathan's sheer speed and firepower, was obliterated in moments. A volley of torpedoes from the Leviathan's broadside tore through an enemy destroyer, disintegrating it in a brilliant flash of light. But the Coalition wasn't backing down. More ships continued to pour into Earth's orbit, coming from all directions. The Leviathan dodged and weaved through the incoming barrage, using its superior maneuverability to remain one step ahead of the enemy. Yet, for every strike they dealt, more ships arrived. The sheer volume of the enemy fleet began to overwhelm the Leviathan's defenses. "We've got incoming bombers," the tactical officer warned. "They're launching waves of energy bombs, aiming for Earth's surface." "Not on my watch," Cartwright muttered. She gritted her teeth and gave the order. "Deploy the drones. We need to disable those bombers before they reach Earth." The Leviathan unleashed hundreds of defense drones, their sleek bodies darting through space with deadly precision. They intercepted the bombers, cloaking their own presence with electromagnetic pulses, then launching disabling shots that crippled the enemy ships before they could release their payloads. One by one, the bombers fell, their explosions lighting up the dark vacuum of space like distant stars dying out. But just as it seemed that the tide was turning, an alarming message flashed across the command console. "Admiral," Krieger said, his voice tinged with concern. "The Coalition fleet's flagship is entering Earth's orbit. It's larger than anything we've seen before. It's equipped with a planetary cannon." Cartwright's eyes narrowed. She had expected a full-scale invasion, but this was more than that. The planetary cannon was a weapon capable of wiping out entire cities in a single strike, and Earth's defensive infrastructure wouldn't stand a chance against it. "Get me a lock on that flagship," she commanded. "We need to disable that cannon before it can fire." The Leviathan turned sharply, its engines flaring as it positioned itself for a direct assault on the flagship. Its weapons charged, the energy crackling in the air as the targeting system locked onto the massive vessel's weak points. The flagship, confident in its size and weaponry, didn't anticipate the Leviathan would dare to attack it head-on. "Fire," Cartwright ordered. A concentrated beam of energy shot out from the Leviathan, slamming into the flagship's defensive shields. The shields flared brightly before flickering, unable to withstand the overwhelming force. The beam cut through the flagship's armor, penetrating deep into the heart of the ship. The planetary cannon's power core exploded in a violent cascade of sparks and fire. The flagship began to fall apart, its systems collapsing as it spiraled out of control, the mighty vessel torn apart by the power of the Leviathan's devastating strike. The Coalition fleet's morale shattered in an instant. But Cartwright knew this was only one battle in a much larger war. There was still more to come. "Prepare for the next wave," she ordered. "We've just shown them what humanity can do. Now let's make sure they never forget it." The destruction of the Coalition flagship was a victory, but it came at a cost. The Leviathan was not unscathed. Though it had obliterated the flagship, its shields had barely held up against the retaliatory fire from the remaining enemy vessels. The battle had escalated into a chaotic frenzy, and the momentum was shifting. Admiral Alice Cartwright stood at the center of the command deck, her gaze hardening as the reports came in. Earth's orbit was now filled with wreckage, both from the Coalition's forces and their own drones. Still, the Coalition had more ships, more firepower, and the planetary cannon was far from the only weapon they had left. The skies above Earth were still thick with enemy ships, and they were coming at the Leviathan from every direction. "Admiral, more ships are breaking through the outer perimeter. They're heading straight for Earth's atmosphere," Lieutenant Krieger said, his voice tight with urgency. "We can't stop them all without taking more damage." "Do what you can," Cartwright replied, her tone calm but firm. "We have to hold Earth's atmosphere long enough for reinforcements to arrive." The Leviathan's defense drones and firepower surged, intercepting incoming ships, but the relentless wave of enemy forces was like a flood, impossible to stop entirely. A barrage of enemy fire rained down on Earth, causing tremors across the planet's surface as massive bombs fell toward the cities below. With every passing moment, the situation was growing more dire. "We can't protect everything," Cartwright muttered to herself, her mind racing. "The planet's surface defenses aren't enough against this kind of assault." "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the United Earth Command," Krieger said. "They've mobilized additional fleet units. They're on their way, but it'll take them hours to reach us." The pressure of the situation mounted. Earth was in immediate peril, and Cartwright knew that if the enemy forces broke through the atmosphere, they would bring an invasion far worse than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Leviathan had held them off for now, but it couldn't hold forever. "Get me a direct line to Earth's planetary defense network," Cartwright ordered. "I need to know what we're working with down there." Moments later, a holographic display appeared before her, showing a wide range of Earth's defense systems. The planetary cannon that had nearly destroyed them was one of the most terrifying weapons, but there were other defenses: interceptors, anti-orbital guns, and the vast array of human-made technology scattered across Earth's continents. But the question now was whether they were enough. "We'll have to increase the firepower," Cartwright said, her voice resolute. "All remaining drones, deploy them around Earth's key cities. We're not letting them take a single one." At that moment, another message came through. The Coalition was preparing its final strike. A massive fleet, far larger than any they had seen before, was entering Earth's atmosphere. This was the last stand. "Captain," Krieger said, his voice shaking slightly, "it's the Verithar Combine. Their fleet is massive. They're launching a planetary assault. It's not just about taking the planet anymore. They're planning to break our defenses completely." Cartwright clenched her jaw. "No, this is it. We make our stand here." She turned to the crew and issued orders with precision. "All hands, brace for full engagement. We're going to hit them with everything we've got. Fire at will. No mercy." The Leviathan surged forward again, its weapons blazing. The massive warship unleashed torrents of fire as the Verithar combined fleet pushed into Earth's atmosphere. Missiles, torpedoes, and laser fire streaked across the sky. The Leviathan was not just a ship, it was a symbol of humanity's defiance, its refusal to be subjugated, and it tore into the enemy forces like a wrathful giant. The Coalition ships, now in close proximity, tried to return fire, but they were overwhelmed. The Leviathan's attacks were relentless. Every shot aimed to cripple, every movement designed to throw off their enemies' targeting systems. Ships disintegrated in bursts of light as the Leviathan unleashed its full firepower, cutting through their formations like a knife through butter. Yet, as the Leviathan struck, the enemy's numbers only seemed to grow. From all sides, the Coalition's reinforcements flooded Earth's orbit, intent on overwhelming the human defense once and for all. This wasn't just a battle in space anymore. It was a battle for Earth itself. The strain of the ongoing conflict was evident in the crew's faces, their fatigue clear, but their determination unwavering. They had pushed back wave after wave of enemy forces, but this final assault was unlike anything they had faced. The Leviathan's weapons systems began to overload, and Cartwright knew they were fighting a losing battle. "Admiral," Krieger said, urgency in his voice, "they're preparing another strike. This one is going to hit Earth directly. It's a massive energy cannon. They're going to target the cities." Cartwright's heart raced. The thought of losing Earth was unbearable, but in the chaos of the battle, she had an idea. It was risky, dangerous, but if it worked, it could change the course of the war. The Leviathan had the ability to redirect its energy, its core systems, into a massive surge of firepower. A weapon so powerful, it could rival anything the Coalition had. "Prepare the core," she ordered, her voice firm despite the mounting tension. "We're taking the fight to them." The crew quickly set to work, rerouting power throughout the ship. With one final command, Cartwright prepared to launch the Leviathan's ultimate weapon, a weapon that would either win them the war or doom them all. The Leviathan's core hummed with energy, a deep, resonating sound that reverberated through the entire ship. Every system was pushed to its breaking point as the crew worked to charge the ship's ultimate weapon, an energy discharge so immense that it could obliterate anything in its path. If the Leviathan didn't succeed now, Earth would fall, and humanity's last hope would be extinguished. Admiral Alice Cartwright stood at the center of the bridge, her gaze fixed on the swirling chaos outside the ship's windows. The Coalition fleet was closing in, their ships forming a vast wall of destruction. The Verithar Combine had deployed their final assault, and the massive energy cannon that had nearly destroyed the planet was now aimed at Earth's surface once more. "Admiral," Lieutenant Krieger said, his voice strained with the weight of the situation, "we have full power to the core. We can unleash the discharge at any moment, but it's going to drain the ship's systems. We won't be able to fight back after this." Cartwright nodded grimly. The Leviathan had been humanity's strongest weapon for months, and now it had to become the beacon of their final defense. "We fight with everything we have," she said firmly. "Once we fire, we're out of options, but we're not going to let them win." The tension on the bridge was palpable as the crew braced for the final strike. Outside, the Coalition fleet loomed larger, their ships locking in formation, ready to unleash their own weapons. The vast energy cannon at the center of their flagship glowed with deadly intent, the dark, pulsating light of its power core, a harbinger of Earth's possible doom. "Admiral, they're charging the cannon," Krieger warned, his eyes wide with fear. "We don't have much time." "Target their flagship," Cartwright commanded. "Lock in on the energy cannon and fire everything we've got." The Leviathan's weapons fired in unison, streaking through space toward the Coalition's flagship. Laser beams, plasma projectiles, and energy blasts all hurtled forward, but the enemy flagship's shields held strong. The battle was rapidly becoming a test of endurance. Could the Leviathan strike first and cripple the flagship before the planetary cannon fired? "Prepare to fire the core energy pulse," Cartwright ordered. Her voice was calm, even as the storm outside intensified. "This is our last chance." Krieger's fingers danced across the console, making final adjustments. The Leviathan's massive core, already overcharged, pulsed with radiant power. On the tactical screen, the energy cannon on the enemy flagship was now fully charged, its destructive force aimed directly at Earth. "Admiral, they're firing," Krieger yelled. In that instant, the Leviathan fired. The ship's core energy unleashed in a single devastating pulse, an impossibly bright beam of raw power that shot forward, cutting through space like a spear. It collided with the Coalition flagship's shield, a colossal explosion of light and energy erupting in the vast emptiness of space. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the flagship's shields disintegrated under the force of the Leviathan's attack. The pulse struck the heart of the enemy ship, ripping it apart from the inside out. The energy cannon, the weapon that had threatened to annihilate Earth, detonated in a fiery explosion, scattering the remnants of the Verithar flagship across the void. "We've disabled their flagship," Krieger said, his voice a mix of awe and disbelief. "But the rest of their fleet is still coming." The victory, however monumental, was only temporary. The Coalition fleet's remaining ships, though disoriented by the destruction of their flagship, were still a powerful force. Their numbers were too great, and the Leviathan, now drained of its core energy, was no longer the unstoppable force it once was. "We can't hold them off much longer," Cartwright said, her mind racing. The reality of the situation was clear. The Leviathan was near its breaking point, but Earth was still standing, its surface defenses holding strong despite the onslaught. And humanity was resilient, perhaps more than the galaxy had realized. "Send a message to Earth's command," Cartwright ordered. "Tell them to prepare for evacuation. If we can't win this fight, they need to be ready." A final hope, one that would require every human in the galaxy to come together, was now humanity's last chance for survival. Even if the Leviathan fell, humanity would continue. They would rebuild, and they would fight again. This war had only proved one thing. Humanity was not just a species to be defeated. It was a force that refused to be extinguished. As the remaining Coalition ships pressed forward, Cartwright turned to her crew. The determination in her eyes was unwavering. "We are humanity's last stand. We don't back down. We fight until the very end." And fight they did. With the Leviathan's weapons offline and the ship's power nearly depleted, the crew gave everything they had. They launched the final wave of drones, engaged the remaining enemies with every remaining weapon, and held the line for as long as they could. But with every second that passed, the Leviathan grew weaker. Then, as if fate itself had taken notice of humanity's unwavering defiance, reinforcements arrived. The human fleets, scattered across the galaxy, had heard the call. They arrived in full force, hundreds of ships, brimming with the might of the human spirit. The coalition, unprepared for this sudden surge of resistance, found itself outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched. "Humanity is here," Cartwright said, her voice heavy but filled with pride, "and will never surrender." The Leviathan's crew, though battered and exhausted, stood tall, knowing that humanity had just secured its place in the galaxy forever.